Okay, welcome everyone. And so I'm going to start this evening with just short. We'll just do a short meditation to start. Just a refuge bodhicitta, just as to set our motivation. Taking a couple of minutes to settle into the breath, body and the breath. Checking in with your motivation, clarifying that in your mind. And just checking in, reminding ourselves again that the purpose of purification, even on a short-term level, short-term, temporary goal, that we don't want, if we don't want relationship problems, business problems, illness, criticism for others, any type of suffering, then, we need to purify the causes of that, just in a temporary way for temporary day-to-day happiness. And also just in terms of Dharma practice, being able to continue meditation so there's no obstacles to our Dharma practice, keeping the mind energetic, joyful, light, inspired in virtue, also we need to purify. And then a longer term level, with sort of longer reaching goals of realising emptiness and bodhicitta, to create space for realisations in the mind, deeper insights into the nature of reality, building up our capacity to be more loving, more kind, more wise, create more powerful virtue, and gradually move in the direction of realisations. Also there's no question we need to purify. Create space for realisations. For any kind of transformation really to happen in our mind, we need purification. So of course when we recite the refuge prayer here, Sangye, that title, it does not express so much in English, but when we translate that down, break that down, Sang, actually, Lama Zopa Rinpoche would mention this many times before we chanted the prayer, Sang actually means one who is totally purified. And Gye means, total, it has achieved all the realisations. Kind of the mind is perfected, complete development of the mind. So that's what we're taking refuge in, the outer Buddha, our gurus, all the masters who have achieved that, awakened that. And again, our capacity, our ability, waking that up every time we chant this, waking that up within ourselves. Not just for our own benefit, but the benefit of all sentient beings. So just trying to hold all beings around us, family, friends. As soon as we take bodhisattva vows, then we take that we're taking a level of responsibility to become enlightened. That's the essence of the bodhisattva vows. Becoming Sangye for all sentient beings. So we just touch and drop in those seeds every time we chant this prayer. So we always mentally carry all sentient beings with us, taking a level of responsibility wherever we're at for their happiness up to enlightenment. Even if we can't guide others, we don't have the skill and quality right now, through our karmic connections with others, friends and family, whatever we do with them, even if it's just ordinary activities, just holding that thought that as I develop more and more, may I be able to awaken them. Gradually guide them out of samsara. So we can do that, hold that motivation, even with our sort of more ordinary day-to-day connections with others. So we bring that into our life the more we visualise all beings, hold all beings around us when we do this prayer together. Sangye chodang sogi chognamla chanchu bardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chen sogi beso namge rola penjir sangye drubar shok sangye chodang sogi chognamla chanchu bardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chen sogi beso namge rola penjir sangye drubar shok. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Just a few of the mantra, light and nectar, purifying us, and opening up this quality bodhicitta, wisdom realizing emptiness, or Buddha nature. Fundamental connection with the outer Buddha and the inner Buddha. Daya o mune mune maha munaye soha. 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 Okay, so welcome to class. Last class in this series, preliminary praxis, and really in some ways the last class of Discovering Buddhism, because it is one of the modules. Even though we're not able to complete it right now, at least we're trying to generate the aspiration to do some of these praxis or deepen in these praxis, depending on where we are. So we did on the weekend, most of us were there, we did the 35 Buddha practice. And at the end of the practice, quite a few of us, I think a couple of people says I still have some questions because we kind of had to finish it, had to get through the commentary and kind of finish it in a sort of quicker way. So I'm just wondering if anybody, before we begin, anybody has any more questions about how you do the 35 Buddha practice? Seems like there was a couple of questions at the end of that class. Anybody want to put their hand up? Anybody written anything down? Or the Vajrasattva practice? Yes, Anna Marie.
I had a question about the 35 Buddha practice. I've noticed I've done Venerable Yantan's 17-minute, very fast video. I paused it quite a bit. And she does a general confession prayer at the end that starts, woe is me, or I think, or ha log. And it's also in the preliminary prayer book. So I know High Lamas often do this practice. Do they often do that following the 35 Buddhas, or do they do them together, or what?
I mean, it's wonderful to do that. I didn't add it in because I didn't want to add any more than you have.
Okay.
But as you get familiar with it, because I just wanted us to get familiar with maybe the first confession, the one that's actually with the 35 Buddhas. But I think that one is good to do, definitely when you're in retreat. Maybe when you
Okay.
get more familiar with the 35 Buddha practice, it's definitely one Rinpoche recommends to do. So usually, if we're in retreat, I think at retreats with Rinpoche, probably do that at least once a day. We don't maybe need to do it every session,
Okay.
but to do it maybe once a day, because it just is a little bit different variation of things that you're confessing. So I definitely think it's a great addition. And if you're able to do, you have time, wonderful. It's just dependent on one's time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
good question. Ladan.
Yes, thank you, Venerable Monier. I had to listen to the to all the practice day this morning, and a question that I have is that can we choose one of the specific of the 35 Buddha, like for example for sicknesses of body, and do it like more specific, like every day or something, like Vajrasattva is every night, and this one, like one of them in particular
Yeah, for example, the one King of the Nagas is very powerful for healing,
for
yeah?
healing, yeah. But
Yeah,
or
I'm
we have
sure
to.
you can. I would need to check because I haven't heard. There's no harm in that. There's absolutely no harm. You could recite that one more.
Mhm.
I think it's still good to do the whole
For
practice.
yeah,
But
the
if you
35.
wanted to recite that more, I think for sure as it says there, it's powerful for that one, powerful for healing, the King of the Nagas.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to do that, feel to do that, that's great. As long as you complete, you could do the whole thing and then just go back and do a certain number more of that one and then
Mhm.
complete the confession prayer if that's calling out to you. And it's possible, I don't know for sure, but it's possible Rimshi gave that kind of advice, over the past for others to do that particular one. There's a lot of other healing practices as well, of course. So, but yeah, I think there's no harm in doing that, Ladan, for sure.
Mhm.
As long
Thank
as you
you.
do the whole thing, as well, but you want to recite a wee bit more of those ones. That's great.
Yeah, I love it when you say your name, and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
So thank you. I couldn't be there this weekend,
Yeah, we
but
missed you,
I
but
I know I was in
you
the
and Rick.
in a break. We went to the island, so we came back, and I didn't have Wi-Fi. So
Yeah, no worries at all. Anyway, you caught up online. You caught up online, yeah.
yeah, I got up. Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Rick.
When we're doing a larger number of prostrations, would you, if you're doing the Manjushri mantra or the Onama
Hmm.
Bhagavate, does that multiply it for those just the 35 Buddhas that you just do, or do you want to repeat that?
Oh,
You say the
so
mantras, do the 35, and then you have to repeat the mantras in order to get the multiplication, or does that multiplication kind of
hold.
continue
Yeah.
when you get done with your 200th or 300th?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So generally, those multiplying mantras, which again I haven't emphasized because I think first we get used, it takes a
Hmm.
while. There's a lot there, so I don't want to overwhelm. So the main thing is to get learn the 35 Buddhas. Om Namo Manjushri, we know that one, and there's two or three
Hmm.
multiplying mantras there. So yes, you only need to do them at the very beginning. Even the Om
Okay.
Namo Manjushri, all the ones that become before, you only do at the beginning. And the other thing that you only need when you're doing a big number, when you do more
Hmm.
than one round, so you don't have to say, I whose name is and say the refuge prayer. You only need to say that at the beginning.
Once. Okay.
And then you just keep repeating, 1 through 35 of the Buddha names. You just go round like that as many times as you're going to do. And then if you're going to do 100 prostrations, then you would do 3 rounds pretty much, And then you would do the confession prayer at the end. And the confession prayer can be done either sitting or, you can either do it, recite. Once you memorize it, you can keep doing the prayers, keep doing the prostrations as you say it, or you can stand up and say the confession, that prayer. I think it's standing. I'm a little bit, can't quite remember now, because we did used to stand and say it a lot, and then there was a time where we sat and said it a lot, so I'm not kind of sure what the instructions. Either one, I think you're fine, But, if you can't, mostly we don't, and in the beginning we don't know it by heart, So, so it's actually good to sit and read through it and really feel the confession and the regret and the rejoicing and dedication.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to catch up with the class, Rick? Maybe not yet, yeah?
Yeah, no, I watched it this morning. I
okay.
appreciate you getting online.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So there's quite a bit in there. So the other thing I wanted to mention with the 35 Buddhas, and I'll get the other questions, is I didn't mention in the class, when we do it, we need to keep our when we go up and down, keeping our hands like this, Of course, we do this, but then when you actually do the prostrations, you want to keep there's some kind of karma of having been born as a web-footed animal if you prostrate with your hands kind of open. So we keep the hands together and go up and down like that, So just keeping your hands kind of like fingers like that. That's one point I wanted to mention. And the other thing was, which most of you might know, and you find this in the commentary as well, that you should, of course, come up, don't sort of hang out down there, and take a break. Now, it doesn't mean that if you do the prostration slowly, that's okay. You don't have to rush. Take your time, watch your knees, watch your back. It takes a while to get fit in that. But you don't sort of like take a kind of momentary when you're down there, You don't do that, It's like, it's kind of, we have to keep a vigor. It's like keeping your vigor and energy a little bit with it, So, and why that is, one of the reasons is it creates the causes to come out of samsara quickly. Come out of your delusions quickly, not get, it's a kind of stuckness there, So, not saying don't have to do the prostrations fast, but we don't chill out on the floor and go, oh, Better to stand up and just take a break, and then I've got a wee bit more energy, I'll start again, than getting your break on the floor, So that's another important point. Jane? I wonder if we're going to be able to hear Jane.
Thank you, Venerable Angie. Another question came to mind, and then can you hear me?
It's going in and out a little bit, Jane, so I wondered if you can put it in the chat again and I'll answer the other question while you're writing it in the chat. Is that possible? Yeah. Okay, Kate.
Two questions, and if you're going to discuss this later, I'm happy to just let you answer it during class. The first one was, when you're doing a large number like 10,000, how do you keep track? Is there like a good way?
Of the prostrations?
Yeah, you could do prostrations. I've sometime heard you're supposed to do 10,000 Vajrasattvas or whatever it is. Like take prostrations, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, how do you keep track? Because it takes some minutes.
It depends what practice you're doing, but we definitely have to count. So it depends, you can count in different ways, but if you're doing, because Vajrasattva is a mala, you have to use a mala, 100%, so ideally you have a mala, you know how many number of beads on your mala, and a good number is either 108 or 111. Because the other point I'm going to bring up, just so you're all prepared. I think some of you know it already, but it's not 10,000. Of course, 10,000 is good. But the goal is actually 100,000 each of these practices. In terms of completing a preliminary practice, the number is 100,000. So again, when you first hear it, you sort of fall off your chair and think, I'll never be able to do that. But however, there's ways to get it done. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, so if you have a mala, so any kind of preliminary practice that requires you're doing a mala, well, it's quite easy because you have a mala, you do one mala. That's 100, 108 or 111. So you just have a piece of paper next to you, and every time you do a mala, you count 1, 2, 3, 4. You're only going to do so many malas in a session, not too many, So the other thing is you can find mala counters. There's these little things you can attach, and they have like 10 little digits on them, or 10 mini beads. Sometimes you see people with, and I have a mala like that, but I didn't bring it tonight. They have something attached to the mala that's a counter, and it has 10 little tiny beads. And every time you do one round, you move one of those beads, and then you've got 10. You know you've done 10, and then you can even just write down, okay, I've done 10, and then you go again. Does that make sense, Kate, for the malas? So for prostrations, actually, prostrations is, in many ways, we're quite fortunate in the Geluk tradition because we do them with the 35 Buddhas. So the more you get familiar with the practice, the more you're going to know how many you're doing, So, because, if we do 35, we do one prostration. If you're doing it on your own in your count, you would definitely do a prostration per Buddha, So that would be 35. That's quite clear. And then you might just find out that you do maybe 6 or 8 in the beginning, but to do the mantras and the refuge and that you could probably count. So you're thinking about probably doing around 40 each time you do a round, maybe it's 45. And then, of course, you've got the 8 medicine Buddhas. And the other thing I wanted to mention, 7 medicine Buddhas, also to Rick. I don't know if you're doing the 7 medicine Buddhas after Rick as well.
I just usually stick them on at the very end. I don't do them I don't do 35 and then 7,
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
I just do the 7 at the very, very end of.
Yeah, that's right. So
where I'm
that's the
getting
way
to.
that's the Rimshi recommends. You just keep, if you want to do 3 rounds of 35, you do that, and then you do the 7 at the very end just one time. So then you would have the 7, you know what that is. And then if you're standing to recite the confession prayer, you're not counting that as a prostration. So you're probably doing 40 to 45 each time. And then each time you do a round, you just, of course, if you're doing like an hour and a half of prostrations, you might have to count. But mostly we're maybe doing 2 rounds or 3 rounds. So you're talking about, if you do 3 rounds of prostrations, you might get about 120 done. Yeah, and you're going to kind of, I think Rick's probably experienced that. You can start to get a sense of how many you're doing every session. Would you say, Rick? How many your extras are?
Yeah, well, I know it's I do the refuge and the Manjushri, that's 6, and then the 35, and then I'll do multiples of 35 till the end, and then I count the 7.
Yeah.
And I have a piece of paper I keep track of.
Yeah, great. So you see, it's in that level, it's quite easy. And then the Kagyu and Nyingma tradition, they do it with a refuge prayer. And so you don't have this like 35, you're just saying the same thing all the time. So they have to use counters and malas, and it's more complicated, So we're, they often have like at the very, I've seen some people prostrate and have a little counter at the very end when they go down, and they just press it. One of these, they press it and it counts up each time how many they're doing. So this tradition is a little bit easier. Does that help, Kate?
Yes, it does. And then my second question is, how do we complete this 14, discovering Buddhism? Is it something that...
Okay, so we're going to go through that. We'll go through that after Kate. Thank you. Yeah, I'll answer that question in the rest of the class. So Jane's question is, to do 35 Buddhas as a morning practice, what would the minimum opening and closing prayers in addition to the 35 be? I think minimum, Jane, would be Om Namo Manjushri and doing the actual practice. I, whose name is, and say your name and take refuge. And then you do the confession prayer. And slowly, as you learn the 35 Buddhas, then you can add in the multiplying mantras, or maybe you want to learn one of those sooner. But the minimum would be doing, because the multiplying mantras take time. I mean, they are very beneficial. But if you don't have time, the minimum is Om Namo Manjushri, 35 Buddha practice, and the confession prayer. And also I was going to say, if you don't have time to do prostrations, you can't do prostrations, still very good to recite the names. I mean, as we discussed in the class, the benefits for reciting the names. I mean, I have sutras. I have a commitment to do one sutra, the Sutra Golden Light. And there's so many Buddha names in there because of the benefits, the prayers that these Buddha made, So don't feel like you're kind of not doing it if you're only reciting the names, It's very powerful to do that. And the next question Jane had was, when doing the prostration, hands flat and tight on floor, do hands together once you touch forehead to the floor? I can't see some of the question for some reason. When doing the prostrations, hands flat and tight on, do you put hands together once you... Yes. So what you do is you go like this, and then when you go flat out, then you bring the hands up like this when you're on the floor, and then the hands down, and you come back again. So even when you go straight out on the floor, you kind of bring the hands to the head, and then you go back up and down again. I mean, that's the tradition with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Some traditions, they just go straight out and come back again and up. But Lama Zopa, go up, and then you put your hands up like this, and then come back up. I hope that answers your question, Jane. I think that's what you were asking. And if
yes,
not,
thank you.
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
All right, good questions. Very good. Any other questions? We're all getting there now. Right. What else was I going to mention now in the class? Okay, I think that's all good. Okay, so just a couple of slides to share here that I also wanted to emphasize, a couple of more points. Not this slide. Here. This one. So, just to recap, what makes most powerful either the 35 Buddhas or the Vajrasattva. In terms of the 35 Buddhas, chanting the names, prostration. But in terms of all of them, deep regret, confession, openness and honesty. And at the end, meditation on emptiness. So the Vajrasattva sadhana we did, as a very short, we seal everything in emptiness, That's a very important point, as is expressed here. On the next slide is, oh no, I didn't have it on the next slide. I guess I left it like that. So just if we can, just very briefly, because the whole purpose of purifying is to realise emptiness. Yeah, we need to realise the nature of mind. We need to get out of the I. Until we realise emptiness, we're always in samsara. So even we don't know much about emptiness, but we'll see in both of the practices in the prayer books, the practice you use, there should be something just to seal the merits, remind us of emptiness. Even if it's just a brief moment you're doing that, So that's the key points that makes it powerful, particularly for the 35 Buddhas. And of course for the Vajrasattva practice, it's the 4 powers, which are included and also in the 35 Buddhas, and it's the meditation on emptiness. Because otherwise, purification is endless. If we don't realise emptiness, we're just going to always be purifying, So we need to. So that's the main goal, purifying the mind to create the realizations for emptiness, to realise our ultimate nature. So just touching in at that all the time. And that reminds us that's where we want to go. Of course, we hold the short-term goals of future rebirth. We're trying to create space for a good future rebirth, create the space to direct our mind more and more into virtue, to create a strength and a capability of the mind in virtue. You know, we need that, and that's really what purification is doing in the moment, creating a space and ability for us to create more and more virtue and to hold our vows. But these are all containers or directing the mind towards that realization of emptiness. And then eventually to develop bodhicitta, the stages, all the levels of bodhicitta to become enlightened. Purification can lead to these outcomes. Karma is completely purified. Yay, job is done. It ripens in a much lighter way, so we have a small discomfort. Or it ripens quickly in this life, so instead of future life suffering. So the benefit of that third one is that, of course, because karma increases, if we purify, and that's why it's very good to do Vajrasattva practice every night, because small things that we're creating in the daytime, we keep on top of them. So they don't ripen in this, they don't ripen at all, Or even if they do, they don't become strong. And even some that are in the mind, that have developed some momentum, they might ripen in this life, just as, again, as a small discomfort, a small obstacle in our life, but they're not increasing. We cut their potential to increase in the mental continuum. Because that's the kind of scary part about negative karma. Great in terms of positive karma, but all karma increases. So we don't want these ones to be increasing, So better if some of them we can even ripen in this life rather than carrying them into future lives, and they're held in the increase in the mental continuum to be something quite unfortunate for us in future lives. So the middle one there, that sometimes, they ripen in a heavy karmas that we maybe created in past lives, and we're purifying this life. One example is, I led a class, it wasn't with this OCBC, it was another group, on the Tara practice. And there's a tradition of Tara practice. Tara practice originally came from a great Indian Mahasiddhi called Surya Gupta. He had some visions of Tara. He had developed leprosy, so he went into a deep retreat into Tara practice to purify to achieve enlightenment and also to purify the leprosy. And so he, at the end of his retreat, his illness was completely purified, he healed, his body became clean and healthy again. There's many stories of great practitioners. There's another one of a female nun, Golongma Pamo, and we're going to talk about the Nyingme practice a little bit. She did all the intense Chinuresic practice and also purified herself of leprosy. I can imagine that's a heavy disease, in those times. But however, he purified himself completely, but he had one small bump on his head at the end of the practice. And he had a vision, at the end of the retreat, he had a vision of Tara, and she said that, you purified all the karma, but because you were a hunter in a past life, you killed many animals, but you also set fire to a forest that killed a huge amount of animals that was going to lead him to something like 500 rebirths in the hell. And so even though he did intense practice, because the karma was so heavy, he still had a small ripening of that karma, which was a bump on the head. So he had the leprosy, but even though he purified, still there was like some remaining karma of this remaining bump in the head. Because of course when you get leprosy, you have all these sores and everything on the head. So he cleared it, but he still had something remaining. So and of course you can imagine it was, so this is what happens, the more we purify, we do need to rely on Sangha and other practitioners, because actually illnesses can be an incredible result of purification, So we need to know that. So we can expect some sickness, some things like that, and that, as I say, can be a good sign. Some mental obstacles, some things like this can come up. My experience was, I think I've shared before, that after I became a nun, I was doing a lot of purification practice in my early days. I mean, for quite some time. But I mentioned Lama Lundruk gave me one of my teachers gave me 100,000 prostrations. Then I did Vajrasattva. I think that wasn't not too much from that, but then at some point I took my ordination vows, and I got quite soon after Lama Zopa Rinpoche said to me, when I took my vows, in the next year you're going to be sick. Some sickness, So I sort of took it on board, but because I didn't have a lot of health problems generally, apart from there's some basic things in India, I didn't really hear that well. And then, fair enough, that year I got really quite sick. A lot of digestive problems, and that carried on for me for some time, on and off for some years. So digestive problems is a result of killing karma, because you don't digest food, it's nourishment for your life. So if you've killed in the past, the result is it's an environmental result of killing in the past. So food doesn't give you nourishment, it doesn't sustain you, it doesn't give you health, So that was that's what we get for killing karma, That's one of the environmental results that can happen. So it took some time for that karma to shift, for me, but eventually it did. And it was quite obvious on some level when it did change, So I kind of thought maybe I'm always going to have this, but the karma finished and the digestive problems became significantly better and improved, So, but Rinpoche always would say, you're purifying, So now these things, so the more we understand the evolutionary karma, the more we have a little bit more vacant conviction in future lives, we have compassion for our future lives, we're okay with that. We become okay with that. And we have the support of other Sangha, maybe our practice in, we understand where the sickness is coming from. It's not that it's not difficult, but on another level, we have a level accepting it, spiritually, and that takes some time. But so that's why we have to understand really the context of the whole path, what we're doing with purification, what we can expect, and how some things that appear like not good are actually very positive, Ladan?
Yes, I have a question about, like, when you I personally, when I'm like, I have the book of Lama Zopa, when he said the power of mantra, and I have kind of happiness to do those mantra, like with Tara or white Tara, and because I have a health issue, it becomes like I don't know, like a bargain. Like I do that, so you give me back my health, and I come to the certain. I know that it's not like emptiness. Help me, like thinking of emptiness, but it's in my heart. I'm asking something.
Yes.
And it's kind of, I say, it's such a shame that I asking something, because it's over, like emptiness is all above that, all those things. And
No,
I
but
don't know.
we have to request realizations. We have to, it's completely fine, but, to request, we need to make requests, and also just for our general health and well-being. I mean, there's periods in our practice where we will be healthy and we can do stuff, and there's other times when we're not so healthy, and so it's completely fine to request the medicine Buddhas for healing, to request Tara for, as long as we don't expect some instant magical thing, which is difficult, and we don't know necessarily. I mean, without a holy being, it's difficult to know how long the illness is going to happen. Maybe this is it, or maybe you will heal. Because I had digestive problems, and it did limit some of the things I could do as a monastic. I couldn't go to retreats because I couldn't eat the foods, I would just get sick, so there were certain group retreats I wasn't able to attend. There was certain things where I was limited in the ability I was able to practice. So I understand that, but I just had to bear with it for some years. And there was times when it went down a little bit, and there was other times when it was more strong. And
Yeah.
Rimshi would particularly say you need to take care of your health right now, you know. So,
Mm-hmm.
I do understand that, but it doesn't mean that you don't do praxis to help your healing and request that, you know. And the main reason would be because I want to continue to practice. You know, I want energy for practice. Look, this great Lama who purified himself of leprosy, you know, I mean, he was doing Tara practice also to heal. I mean, the main thing for great holy beings, you know, as I said, the story with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I think I shared this before. And it is inspiring. It helps us when we're not doing well, you know, when we're going through purification. You know, Lama Zopa, you know, the one monk at Rinpoche's house, you know, I think I shared, you know, he just got a transmission of a sutra, the Vajrasattva Sutra, which is it's very strong for purification, it's for realizing emptiness. But they often say when you recite that, sometimes obstacles come because it's so powerful. Karma ripens, yeah. So anyway, he got the transmission. He was feeling very inspired. So he sat down one night to read it, and as soon as he read it, he got a headache. Have I told this story before? I think probably. Have you heard it, Stan, before? No? Okay. I'm just curious because I've got a couple of classes, so I can never quite, you know, remember what stories I've shared, you know. But anyway, sometimes we forget the stories. So anyway, Venerable Sering, he's like, well, I think I'll just fold that back up and put it on because he got a headache right away, you know. He tells it so sincerely, you know. He says, I think my self-cherishing just came up, so I thought I'll just fold that up, and he put it up on his, you know, the way he says, I'll just put it back on the text, on the shelf, you know, and I'll do it later, you know, because he got this headache. And so the next time Lama Zopa Rinpoche came to the house, Venerable Sering told him the story, you know. He said, Rinpoche, I got the Vajrasattva Sutra empowerment and I got this headache. And I just had to stop. And Rinpoche went, oh, you're so lucky. That never happens to me.
Wow.
So what was Rinpoche saying? I mean, you're so lucky. Instant purification. That is, we're not at that level of psychological evolution with the practices, you know. We're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, you know. You know, but well, we do. But, you know, if some sickness comes, we might get a bit of fright, you know, so, or thing. But, you know, the lamas at Rinpoche's level, he's like, you know, so wonderful, you know. If you get a sign of sickness, you get a sign of stuff coming out. You know, he would see the students who are purifying, he's probably so happy. I mean, of course, Rinpoche still feels great compassion when you're sick. There's no question. I mean, he does everything to help you, you know, as well. But also so happy you're purifying, you know. I mean, they can see that because they have that ability in clairvoyance, you know. So, I mean, Rinpoche in his past life is a Laudo Lama. There's also the story of how in his previous life, the Laudo Lama, when he decided to go into meditation, because he was a lay Lama, when he went into retreat, as soon as he went, quite soon after he went into retreat, he couldn't, his legs, he lost all ability to walk. I think maybe he had a mini stroke. It's hard to say, you know, up in the Himalayas what he had. There wasn't doctors. They couldn't diagnose what went wrong, but he couldn't walk, you know, and that's why his daughter had to come up and live with him to cook for him. But he just, in his mind, and this was Rinpoche already in his past life, a great Lojong thought transformation practitioner, he thought, well, perfect, it's the protectors are just saying now you need to sit on your cushion and not move. So that's how he thought, you know, and he basically stayed in the cave for 13 years. And he actually developed his ability to be able to walk again. But it took some years, you know. So for them, it's like, it's incredible, you know. Us, we're a bit more weak-minded, you know. And it doesn't mean you have to be tough and strong and you don't care about yourself. It's not like that. It takes some time.
Yeah, I should not go like neurotic about it.
No, not neurotic,
Yeah.
but try to think how wonderful it is on purifying. Even you don't feel it. Try just every day, okay, how wonderful I'm pure. And slowly, and it doesn't mean you don't do Tara, you don't do healing. You also, you know, but just trying to because in reality, that is what's happening. Right? It's just that we can't see that necessarily. And it's hard to feel it when you're not feeling well, you're going through your stuff. But even we just plant the seeds, how wonderful it is on purifying. And it's not like you're going to feel it, but slowly you might, you know. It's just making your mind familiar with that different mindset, you know. So
Thank you.
So other signs, so next slide. Okay. I did want to mention just a couple of other things, and then we need to move on to the next slide. In terms of signs of purification, so, if you do intense purification, some of us might know there are signs you can get as well, like signs in your dreams. There's positive dreams like eating yogurt. Eating white foods is a sign of purification, like milk and yogurt, maybe vanilla ice cream, I don't know, but it's not mentioned in the text. But usually milk, yogurt, milk products, that's a sign of purification. Other signs can be like receiving teachings. I mean, not necessarily that's a sign of purification, but it's just a good dream. It's an auspicious dream. If you're receiving teachings. Another one of purification can be flying. Now, flying isn't always a positive one. If you're always a bird in your dream, that's not necessarily. That might be karmic imprints for being a bird in your past life. But you're flying and there's a sense of positivity, a lightness, maybe an expansiveness. That's a good dream. Dreaming of monastics or gurus, lamas, are great dreams, sign of kind of, not necessarily again, maybe purification, but just auspicious dream, your practice is going well. Of course, if you dream of deities, that's wonderful. But generally speaking, the main sign is your mind is a little bit lighter, mentally lighter, and there's more, your propensity for virtue, a little bit more patient, maybe a little bit less self-centered. Really, it's more in terms of your daily life experience of being a wee bit more patient, a bit more light, a bit more kind, less anger. That's the most important one. But when you do intense practice, sometimes you can have dreams, or washing in the dream, washing and being in clear water. Another one in terms of like Vajrasattva practice, or maybe some of the other ones I'm going to mention briefly because there's other purification practices, is vomiting, or stuff coming out, dirty stuff coming out. Because, we do that in the Vajrasattva practice. We have stuff coming out our lower doors, But also like stuff coming out the mouth, can be a sign of like releasing negativities in your dream. Okay. Next slide. So we're going to go into, I think, what Kate was asking. So these are, and I'm going to send you the form because I'm not sure if base sent it or not, but there is the preliminary practice goes through the form of what you need to do. So we'll send that out anyway for you tomorrow or the day after. And this is what tells you on the form. So to complete the Discovering Buddhism module, I mean, many of you, I don't know if many of you are necessarily looking to complete it, but you can over time. I mean, if you've done all the assessments, you've done all the classes, you would definitely get a completion certificate. But unfortunately, this 14th module is a really big one, So, and I think it's just more important for us to continue in some ways a Lamrim practice, get started on being motivated to do these preliminary practices which deepen the Lamrim. So 2 weeks of Lamrim retreat though. So that can be done either in your home. It's really good to do maybe in a group setting. Though, of course, at Vajrapani, we lead group retreats here on Lamrim. There's actually one coming up with Geshe Legsog in the summer, in June. And so there's one there. There's also the 1 month Kopan course that they do in our monastery in Nepal. Very famous. That's every November. If you have the fortune to go there. They also run 10-day retreats there on Lamrim. So that would really cover, even if you do 10 days, that would cover the 2-week retreat really. 100,000 Vajrasattva mantras, 100,000 prostrations, 3 noon days. So 100,000 actually means 111,111. Because why? Because we have to do 10% for mistakes. When I first heard this, I was a bit like smashed, I was like, oh God, so I was already up 100,000. So the benefit is though, especially with prostrations or you're doing mantra retreats and commitments, if you have a mala that has 108 or 111 beads on it, it's almost like you do 1 mala, so it means you have to do 1,000 malas, So you can count it like that in your mind, if you have a mala with 111 beads, or 108, well, you just need to do a few extra miles. But basically, you're doing 1,000 malas of Vajrasattva. That's what you have to complete. The prostrations, of course, yeah, you do have to do the 111,000. 111 because it's 10% each. You know, you do 10% 110,000, then 10% of that, and that's what it moves up to. But I have to say, once you get up to the 100,000 something, you really start to feel like something shifted. You do feel like that there's a reason for these numbers. You know, they have a power to shift the mind, create a shift in the mind in a certain way. And the 3 nungnes, so for those of us who don't know what a nungne is, it means abiding and fast, just in a nutshell. So I'm actually offering one of these over the, together with a Chenrezig retreat over July at Vajrapani here. So a nungne consists of, it's just over a 2-day practice. And it's a very intense Chenrezig practice. It's very ritual orientated. We do prostrations, we do mantras, we do visualization. You do 3 sessions a day of that, and it's led. You know, you need to have it led. You need to definitely do a nungne with a group, the first for some time, based on a nungne. Anyone else here done nungne? Urs, you done nungne? Rick, did you have your hand up? No. Urs, have you done a nungne before? No.
No, I'm afraid not.
Not yet. Anna Marie, have you done a nungne before? No. So, anyway, first time for everything. Kelly's thinking about it, eh, Kelly? Maybe this time. So, we're doing a nungne here at Vajrapani over the good time, the really most beneficial times to do them are over the Buddha days. There's like two weeks over Losar, which we're trying to move into here at Vajrapani to offer 3 of those over Losar, because there's 16 days where everything you do is multiplied 100 million times. And there's 3 other days in the year where everything you do is multiplied 100 million times. It's these special Buddha days, significant days in the Buddha's life. So we are going to offer one here at Vajrapani over the one in July. It's a 2-day practice though. I'll get your question in a minute, Kate. It's a 2-day practice, and so each day you do 3 sessions there's an introduction the night before, you have to come the night before, and then over 2 days you do 3 sessions, each session's about 3 hours long, and you do prostrations and mantras and visualization, and it's actually very nice because you sit for a while and then you get up and do some prostrations. Then you sit for a little bit more, do some prayers and mantras, and you get up and do prostrations. So you're not sitting all the time, you're up and down, and there's a lot going on in the practice. So the sessions actually kind of go through quite quickly. So the other point to this practice is the first day, both days you take 8 Mahayana precepts, which most of us are familiar with. And so, of course, the first day with Mahayana precepts, you eat and you drink. You eat and drink, you can drink all day, and you have 1 meal. Second day, along with the 8 Mahayana precepts, you take the vow of no eating and drinking. So you fast all day, and you don't drink. And you do this from the evening, that morning till the following morning. So you're fasting for a good 24 to 30 hours, no eating and drinking. And that's a very powerful method for purifying and developing compassion very quickly, because you think you're taking on all the hunger and thirst of all sentient beings, so you kind of, you really get that experience, and you can imagine, we know when we don't eat, we purify, that lightens the body, but purifying the mind, purifying attachment energy. So also no drinking is another layer of purification. But the practice itself holds you very well in that practice, because just deciding to not eat or drink for a day is, for most of us, quite difficult, yeah? So the benefit of doing nungne, we have a beautiful altar, and we're doing all these prayers, so it has a way, it doesn't mean that you don't experience some hardship, but the practice really holds one well in that process of not eating and drinking. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say about the nungne, is that it's almost like doing a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, doing one Ngöndro. If you do it very well, very powerfully. Doesn't mean we don't do the Vajrasattva retreat, but it's just talking about the weight of the purification you get, how powerful it is. So of course when you do 3, a Ngöndro is like one retreat, one Ngöndro. So if you do 3, you would do 2, one Ngöndro is 2. Then you just carry on, you do another one. So the next day you eat and drink, and the next day after you don't eat and drink. Then the next day you eat and drink, and the next day you don't eat and drink. So you build up, There's a very common practice within a lot of the monasteries. You do 8 Ngöndros over, a year, So you do 8 in a row. So here the commitment is to do 3. You can either do 1 at a time. You could come and do 3. Generally, the last couple of years at Vajrapani, we have offered 3 Ngöndros in a row, 3 or 4. This year we're only going to offer 1 along with some Chenrezig practice to help people to get ready for the Ngöndro, to get familiar with Chenrezig practice. But in the future we're hoping most years to offer 3 Ngöndros. But sometimes it's good to just come and do 1 just to get a feeling of the practice, and then build up slowly, to maybe do more. But it's I think it's a few of you here, I think for sure you would really enjoy as in, I'm sure you would benefit, we'd all benefit for the practice. But I think I'd highly recommend to think about that at some point as well, to do that. And you just basically come and you're led in the practice, in the beginning. So it's more like mental preparation you need just to come, Kate, you had a question?
I think you mostly answered it, but to be honest, it scares the hell out of me, this one. And all I can hear is I'm going to have a horrible time and I'm going to suffer, and I don't know what the relief is, And just saying that to be honest, because I'm kind of thinking, well, you offered a lot of encouraging things. So saying this after the fact doesn't make much sense because you were very encouraging, but is there anything you could offer to people who, like me, who might be really scared of doing something like this, about how to get over that first hurdle? Because I imagine if I did this the first time, maybe I will be like, oh, I can do it again. But that first one seems very hard to think about how to do that.
It is hard to do it, and maybe it's good to read some of the benefits first, We'll read some of the benefits. That can help to outweigh what we think is going to be the hardship, because it will be hard. We've never, most of us haven't taken a whole day not to drink. And also you're doing prostrations and all these things, But I have to say, in terms of Chenrezig practice, as I mentioned at the beginning, I was saying to Stan, the Mani mantra, Lama Zopa Rinpoche would call it the mantra for happiness, So I think for this practice, you have to think about the benefits. They have to outweigh whatever challenge you're going to have. And I remember I did my first 3 Ngöndros at the nunnery in Nepal. So of course you have all the nuns chanting. It's so beautiful. There's so many people doing it together. And I really struggled with the no drinking. And of course at that time we didn't have the full practice translated in English, which was fine because I didn't know what I was doing anyway, really, So I would do prostrations and chant Om Mani Padme Hum and just listen to the nuns and try and do some of the, that's the other thing, because there's quite a lot of detail to the practice. So you just build up what you can. But even though I couldn't do the whole thing really well, and I did struggle with the no drinking, and it was very hot there. It was like May, which is super hot there. The next morning, the tea was so delicious. The water has got hundreds of tastes, The tea's so delicious. Your mind is so much light. It's really like instant purification. Yeah. So it's not, yes, you have to be prepared that it's going to be difficult. I can't say it's not going to be hard the first few times. And it's interesting because the first one can be hard, and then you might have a few that are okay. Like, for example, if you do 8, at some point you decide I'm going to do 8. You think the first one would be very hard because you've never done it before. Then you might have another couple you think, oh, wasn't it too bad? But then maybe halfway through there's another one that's more difficult, maybe because you're tired, or it's just purifying so much karma, So I think, to read up on the benefits, Kate, and which I can, we're not going to go into all that tonight, is very important. Because we can't say there's not going to be any hardship, there is, but we need to think about the benefits. That's always like that, and focus on that. And it's surprising, that's why we do it in a group. That's why the practice time in the Gompa is quite, there's quite a lot of time in the Gompa, because otherwise you're just hanging out on your own thinking about how thirsty you are, So there's a lot of time in the Gompa for a reason, because that's what the food is, the practice, But I remember after I did the first 3, then, the nunnery is a little, there's a nunnery separate from the monastery in Nepal. And at that time, I was very fortunate that one of my teachers, Geshe Lama Konchok, was alive, living at the monastery. He was a great, great yogi who had spent 25 years in the mountains. And he had done something like 2,000 noon days. So that's the other thing. It's like, whoa. If they can do 2,000 noon days, I mean, come on, I could do one, We have another incredible, inspiring practitioner, Venerable Charles, who came. Kelly's met Venerable Charles. Bay, you met Venerable Charles Bay? Yeah. He's very inspiring. Every year at Vajrayogini Institute or Centre in France, he does 100 noon days. That takes 7 months. And he's been doing that about the last 10, 12 years. And he's a Westerner, so it's like, okay, well, if they can do, sometimes if they can do that, thinking like that as well. And he came a couple of years ago, and actually we were hoping he could come this year, but it's not working for him to come. So he's very inspiring, because he's dedicated his life pretty much to this practice and guiding people in that practice. So like that, thinking about the benefits is really the best way that we can get inspired, because we know and expecting that it's going to be hard, but not allowing that to just completely overwhelm you, It takes time to build up, So that's the ones that that's recommended for this Discovering Buddhism course. I wanted to just touch on the other preliminaries, because again, looking at preliminary practice, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the way he guided the students, of course giving individual advice for each of the students, we don't have that now. And generally speaking, in the other traditions, everybody does they all do the preliminaries, It's very unusual how Rinpoche guided the students with individual praxis, but generally, as moving forward in the organisation, we are supporting the students to do as many of the Ngöndros as they can, So the refuge one is actually a good one to start with. That's where you accumulate 100,000 refuge mantras, which means I go for refuge in the Buddha, I go for refuge in the Dharma, I go for refuge in the Sangha, and I go for refuge in the Guru, the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. But you usually chant it in either Tibetan or Sanskrit. That one's actually a very light and easy one to start with, and it doesn't take as long as the Vajrasattva. So what we're hoping to develop in the North American region, because I've already developed it in Australia, is an opportunity for the students, just like you do a Discovering Buddhism program, to do a Ngöndro program. So there might be an opportunity where there might be a group starting like Refuge together, and there'll be a teacher to give you an introduction, to maybe give the transmission, to give a short commentary, and to someday maybe hold the group through the practice, where you can do it at home, because many of us can't take 3 months out to do Vajrasattva retreat. There are ways to do this at home. And actually, the information that you'll get handed out to you, you can do Vajrasattva. You could do many of these at home, even when you're working, But so I think that would be the idea, to support people within your working environment time to try and do them at home, so you can get through your preliminary praxis. So we're hoping in the next year or two to have a program like that available in North American region. So refuge is one. Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, that is that one's to develop faith and devotion and blessings for realizations. And again, that's reciting mantra 100,000 times. The praise to Lama Tsongkhapa, Migme Sewe prayer 100,000 times. Mandala offerings, as we see in the image here, Actually, we had a monk here recently. He just did a 3-month retreat and completed his 100,000 mandala offerings. And that's what, as you see here, offering the universe symbolically. And of course, there's a commentary on how you visualize, and that one's heavier, weighty. So some of these Ngöndros they have different, little bit different purposes. So the mandala offerings mainly for creating merit. What does merit do? It creates inner contentment, a kind of contentment, a richness, a happiness to practice virtue, a happiness to keep our vows and commitments. Of course, overcomes obstacles to practice, but also having a courage, a happiness, and energy to keep going, a happiness of the mind. So that's one of the things merit-making practices do. And there's more benefits to that. So these are there's a couple more here. Satsa making images of the Buddha. So we've actually set up here, we're in the process of finishing it, and a place at Vajrapani where people can make satsas. Make satsas of different Buddhas, of stupas, and this is very powerful for creating merit, that particular practice, and develop, again, for supporting a sort of courage on the spiritual path. And of course, we can say if we're making images of the Buddha's body, well, that's creating the karma for us to have the body of the Buddha, to actually have these Dharmakaya, Rupakaya, Sambhogakaya aspects. We're creating seeds all the time when we make images of the Buddha. Water bowl offerings is one of the main ones that I was given. Repeated daily offerings can be 100,000. So that one is easier to count. You can actually do it if you're doing 7 water bowls every day. I mean, it might take a long time if you're only doing 7. Cultivates generosity and merit as well as purification. So of course, having done many myself, I would say there's a lot of benefits to the water bowl practice, but I'm not going to talk about that now. But once you do the practice extensively, you start to feel, you understand what those benefits are more. You feel them. They become a part of you. Samaya Vajra is again a purification practice with a mantra. That one doesn't take too long. It's a short mantra, and it's purifying pledges and samayas with the guru, the spiritual teacher. That's the main focus of that one. You don't need to hold all this just now, but I just wanted to let you know there are these other ones, and it's very likely if we do this in this is a North American region, as they did in Australia, it would be very likely we'd probably start with the refuge practice, because I think it gives people a real grounding and refuge and a sense of safety and security in a refuge practice. So it's a beautiful one to start with. It doesn't bring up too much stuff. It's kind of very light and nice and gentle on the mind, the refuge practice. This last one here, which we have done, Kate, we did a little bit of this at the last retreat I led here. I like to try and do this when I lead retreat here. We try and do this Dorji Kadro practice just at the end, just to get a taste of the practice. Very nice one. Offering black sesame seeds. So what we do is we make the seeds. Neil, you were here as well. We did it together too. So you have a plate and you get some sesame seeds and you do them in the shape of a scorpion, and there's some visualization where you imagine all yours and all sentient beings' negativities get absorbed in the scorpion, and you offer them to Dorji Kadro as a deity, So this is a beautiful statue that was made that's at one of our centres. I think it's in New Zealand. They have a whole area in their centre that's dedicated to this practice. So they've made this statue, you put a fire underneath, you put the sesame seeds inside the mouth, as you see Lama Zopa Rinpoche doing. That's what he's doing there. He has a small statue there, and you offer them to the mouth at Dorji Kadro, and you imagine they're getting eaten up, all your negativities. And this is also a very sweet, not too demanding physically practice. Very good practice, and it's usually recommended even when you do, like, if you do 100,000 refuge, or even do your short retreat yourself, any kind of retreat. It's very good to do this practice just at the end of your retreat. It kind of just like purifies any mistakes, it's very good for sealing the retreat energy. So that's a good one to learn, and that's why I try to include it in the retreats I do here, so we get familiar, we know that practice, and it might be something, because you don't need a whole fire, you can just use a small, what's it called, barbecue? They're not called barbecues, these little, there's another name for it, but just put a few coals in. You don't need a whole fire, just a few coals, and you offer, as long as the seeds sizzle and burn, cook, then that's sufficient, So many of us are maybe able to do that if we have a garden, a garden space, or so. This is a very good practice. And again, that one doesn't, even doing 100,000 doesn't take so long. So these are the 9 Ngöndros, 9 preliminary praxis in the Geluk tradition. And that, of course, these are 7 plus the 35 Buddhas plus the Vajrasattva practice. Any other questions? Let me see if there was anything else. Right, so I think the last bit of advice really is in terms of approaching our practices, approaching the Lam Rim. Oh, there was one point before I mention this. Very important when we do purification praxis, I think I've mentioned before, always a little bit meditation on the Lam Rim. Because the whole point, and so I said it, at the end, purifying, we remember emptiness. But, going through, using a prayer like the foundation of all good qualities, the 3 principles of the path. So after you purify, of course, during the week, for busy, we might not have time. But then when we have a bit more time, every time we purify, reading a Lam Rim prayer. Or reading we have this Lam Rim booklet, the 365 days of Lam Rim. Reading one of the days. Because when you purify, that Lam Rim topic will go deeper. And the whole point to purify, collect merit, is to develop Lam Rim realizations. So that we have to combine them together. So either using the 365 days, very good. Of course, if you've got more time, you can refer to text, just do some reading on a topic. Or you can, read a shorter prayer, whatever your timeline is. And as I said, minimum dedicating an emptiness, but just trying to move our mind a little bit, getting the blessings of the Lam Rim topics, getting a deeper insight and experience. That's what the purification, that's what the Ngöndro's for that. Remembering the advice of, expectation versus aspiration. I think we talked about this, Rick, when you were at Vajrabani for your retreat. So this is what we want to avoid expectation and embrace aspiration. Focus on that side, yeah. Because expectation brings, usually, what we call in this tradition, lung, wanting a result, expecting a result, looking for a result, that can bring lung, a tightness in the mind. And it can bring either tightness, or eventually what it brings is disappointment, discouragement. Because we expect something to happen and it's not happening. It brings a tightness to the mind, which eventually can lead to discouragement, despondency, or a lung, a lung that's not helpful. Like lung is a wind disease in the Tibetan tradition. And of course, when we do these practices, we might still get some lung. That's normal. We might feel a tightness in the mind and the body, and that just takes time to work with that, because we're putting a powerful medicine in our mind that we're not used to. So there is going to be a bit of kickback with the mind. So we might get a bit of lung, and just be careful. That's okay. A little bit's okay, but we just need to know how to manage it. So I always say, of course, if you've ever got any questions with that, not sure, you can always get in touch with me. If you're not sure if this is okay with whatever's happening with you, please reach out. But main thing is keeping the advice of the Kadampa masters, the great practitioners of the past. Look far ahead with your practice, long-term goals. Don't give up, and don't squeeze your mind, which comes when we have too much. So aspiration is that, and expectation are the opposite of those, So keeping those very helpful advices in the mind. as I mentioned before at the weekend, keeping inspired always, because there'll be times when we do extensive purification when the mind gets uninspired, feels low, feels a bit heavy, stuff's coming up. So just keeping to your plan, keep to your plan. And also reading, listening, reading biographies of great masters. It's very important. Anything else I wanted to say? What can we expect? The other thing we can expect, there are times when you have, some experience of your mind, If you're doing intense purification, you might have some sort of quite a mind-blowing experience that you've never had before, And that's wonderful, but that will probably change. That'll probably shift again, So what we kind of want to expect more is gradual insights, a gradual development. It's good to have experiences. We want to experience the clarity of our mind, some experience in Lamrim meditation, wonderful. But that won't necessarily last in the beginning. It takes a while to develop stable experience and realizations. But we should expect gradual insights, a deepening in our Lamrim practice. That's okay to expect that. And even when we do have deep experiences, we can rejoice, even though it ends, because it's creating a strong imprint in our mind, We might think, I had some experience of emptiness or bodhicitta, or my heart opening. Well, okay, it finishes, it doesn't last, but it won't, but we can rejoice because it's creating an imprint in your mind for realizations in the future. So I think that's about everything from my side. Is there there's something in anything else? Any questions? Comments? Anyone else? Ladan.
Yes, Venerable. I have a question about like the 14th is, you said that the 14th session is very long about the preliminary. I want to know when is like all the session is completed. Like we can ask for have a paper that we did it. Is it correct? And if I understand well, this time is like the last session, or it can continue?
So this is the last session. This is the last module of Discovering Buddhism.
Yeah.
Module 14, which for most people is very difficult because, it's not just having a few classes and doing an assessment. It's a whole other level of commitment. And that's why generally it's quite difficult for people to complete the Discovering Buddhism module and get because there is a completion certificate. It's not impossible. And of course, if you want to work towards that, that's wonderful, And the main thing to complete it is, of course, when you complete that, what it means also is you become teach Discovering Buddhism. So I think the other part of it is, of course, for your own side, if you want to complete it and feel I've done it and I got the certificate. But to become a teacher in Discovering Buddhism, you need to complete this 14th module. If that's your ambition.
You mean we have to do all the prostration?
You have to do the 100,000 prostration. As it stands at the moment, this was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice for those who want to teach. But really, his advice as well, of course, it's nice to have an aspiration to teach. But for many of us in the beginning, what's more important is to have an aspiration to practice.
Yeah.
To get Lamrim realizations, not so much like, I want to complete this module so I can teach, That's good because we want to become a Guru Buddha, right? We want to be able to be a Buddha who teaches, So it's better to have the aspiration if you want to complete the module because you want to do the Vajrasattva, you want to purify, that's the main thing. And of course, if you do that, so if you find yourself completing 100,000 Vajrasattva, 100,000 35 Buddhas, prostrations, and the three Nungnes, and you've done the Discovering Buddhas, all the modules and all the assessments and reading, then of course you should get in touch with us, because you can get the completion certificate, and you could become someone to teach, eventually, you could be a teacher of Discovering Buddhism. So there's two sides here. The main thing for us now is to focus on wanting to purify, develop our Lamrim realizations, but there's no harm. I mean, it's good to have the thought eventually, maybe I'll have some karma to teach in the future, So we can have both together, But the key thing, I think, now is such. I mean, of course, it takes a lot of commitment anyway to do this. To do those practices, So, and the thing is, really, to be able to teach Lamrim well, one has to do those practices. You can see, most of us could see, if it's the first time we've done this course, and that's mainly what we've done, most of us wouldn't feel qualified to teach the course, right? Because we need to integrate into our being, into our practice, a deeper understanding what renunciation is, bodhicitta and emptiness, to be able to teach. And the only way really to do that is more purification. Or, of course, some people purify much more through extensive study, like doing basic program, doing master's program. For many people, that's been their path of more extensive purification. Some of our teachers may or may not have done as much Ngöndro practice, but they probably have a very strong daily practice, and they've probably done some retreat, and they've done maybe like master's program, basic program, and so from that perspective they're also qualified to teach. So we would like to have more teachers for sure in this tradition, in the FPMT. We're always wanting to develop more teachers, but so many of us, I think, have a leaning maybe more towards Ngöndro and purification and Lamrim. Some people have more a leaning towards extensive philosophy, debate, like that. So my leaning is much more being service, purify, Lamrim, and that's the way Rimshi guided me, and that fits for me, So, and that's why, I know quite a bit about the preliminary practices, because I've done most of them, not all of them actually, because as I say, done Vajrasattva, Prostrations, water bowls. I think I haven't done the mandala offering. I've done many, but I haven't done the 100,000.
100,000, like for a year, it's like 100. I calculate with the cat. It's like 90 every morning. And,
to do the mandala?
Yeah, three times 90 or something like that.
Yeah, so I think for most years, right? Yeah, and that one, again, that one, each one, you would have to sit with each one. And of course, I'm always happy to help. If you really decide you want to do 100,000 of one of them, you have to sit with each one, look at your schedule, look at your, what you can do every day, look at when you can do retreats, and work out like how long, because it depends on what time, what your timing is. The Vajrasattva one, it's possible. I have a friend right now who's doing it while she's working. She does a session in the morning, session in the evening. The other commitment to make it more powerful is to stay on the same cushion. So she's not travelling anywhere in that time. And if she does travel for 2 or 3 hours to see someone, she gets back the same day. But she doesn't go out of state. So each of the Ngöndros have certain boundaries that you need to set up. And they're a little bit different for each one. I didn't have time to go into that kind of detail. But the Vajrasattva has certain boundaries that make it more powerful. And if you kind of loosen the boundaries too much, you lose energy. I think you lose the power. I mean, you're going to do 100,000, so it's better to do it. If you can't do 3-month retreat, you need to do it at home. Better to make it, you're putting all this time and effort in, better to make it as powerful as possible. Still within what you can manage and work in as possible with that one. Same with the 35 Buddhas is quite manageable. You don't have to do it in the same place, the same seat. There's different ways where you can manage the 35 Buddhas. So each one, depending on how, have some have more restrictions than others. Some are more easier to do, like water bowl practice.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that continually. You could do, 10,000 because you have a chance to do, and then have a break and do another 20,000. That can be done in a group retreat, which maybe at some point we might offer at Vajrapani if there's enough interest. So you can do it in a group retreat over a week and count everybody else's water bowls. That's a nice one.
Yeah,
That's the only one you can do it with, So if you have 10 people who come and do maybe they do 5,000 water bowls each in a week, it's possible, then you can count 50,000.
Wow.
So that's why we might do that one if we get enough interest, for people to do, because then we do it over 2 years and a bunch of people have completed 100,000 water bowls, But the rest of them you have to do on your own. You can't count anybody else's. So there's, each one has different things, and some of them are more easy to start. Like in some ways, refuge is a bit easier in some ways to start than the Vajrasattva or the 35 Buddhas. It can be, So I think in North America, in Australia, they're starting with the refuge practice. But it depends. You might feel a leaning to do but again, if you feel like you really want to purify Vajrasattva, these are the two ones to really start. And those are the two I started with, so.
Yeah. I have the little booklet anyway. I use it like regularly.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm going to send the practice as well, Adan, that we used at the weekend.
Super.
That's
Thank
Venerable
you.
Robina's. I made a couple of additions because that's also very nice, so it gives you a little bit different,
Thank
little
you.
bit more explanation, slightly different explanation. So this Sunday, we are going to do Vajrasattva Sog. Basically, it includes Vajrasattva mantra. I'm going to offer that at the centre. So, if you have time, it's wonderful to come, and if not, that's fine too, but I just wanted, just advertising that we're doing that on, Saturday, isn't it? Be at 2 o'clock at OCBC, and it's also online if you'd like to join. Otherwise, as I say, please, you're welcome to get in touch with me. If you, have any more questions around your Ngöndro practice, you're starting to get inspired to do it, to do something, to really count 100,000. It's good to check in because you want to make sure you do it properly, Otherwise, you do 40,000 and realise, but I did this one and I missed a day and I can't count it anymore, So there's some where it's okay to miss a day, and there are others where once you start, you can't, you need to carry on. There's a continuity. Most of them involve the continuity, not missing a day. So, and just getting the sort of boundaries around each one as you move into it, And there's certain things you can do at the start of the practice that make it more powerful. Like when you first begin the 100,000, that help give energy to carry on as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, everyone, and I thank you for your enthusiasm. And I know I'm so rejoicing that some of you are doing these practices already. It's wonderful. It's really great. I'm very, very happy. So thank you. So let's just dedicate all the merits through doing this practice, and that for all of us continue to stay inspired in our practice of Lamrim, preliminary practices, meditation, purification, and we're able to reach all the goals and the aims and the ambitions that we make in those practices, to keep them going together, keep moving on, moving along in the path, developing these incredible realizations, imprints all the time for these realizations. Chanju senjo rinpoche mage pa namge girshik ye pa nyamba me pa ye gonne gondu pelwar shuk. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. Samsara, nirvana lack even an atom of inherent existence, and cause and effect, independent, arising or unbetraying. I seek your blessing to discern the meaning of Nagarjuna's thought that these two are mutually complementary and not contradictory. Incomparable, kind, and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life, and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Good night.
Thank you so much for joining.
So much. Thank you.
Angie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
so
you.
much.